Thanks, Bersh, and good morning, everyone. My apologies at the outset for not being with you there in Chicago today, but between travel and obviously the impact of Hurricane Sandy, this is where I need to be right now in Seattle in our head offices. So just a couple of quick opening comments on the hurricane. Obviously, this has been a massive and devastating storm. The breadth and scale of which I don't think I've seen in my 2 decades here in the US. The T-Mobile network is doing well. There are pockets of the network where we are seeing significant outages, but my team is aggressively working to restore services in those areas, and we're working very hard with our customers to ensure that they're connected at this time of great need. But a huge storm, and I think all of the wireless industry is very focused on restoring service in the impacted areas as soon as is possible. So with that said, apologies that we have to do this over a video link today, but hopefully you can see me and you can hear me relatively clearly. And I wanted to give you some thoughts on this evolving world of 4G and the opportunity that's in front of us. So I'm going to do a couple of things today, talk about 4G. I am going to give you some updates on the T-Mobile business, and especially the news around the combination of T-Mobile US and Metro PCS, which was announced just a few weeks ago here. But let me start with the 4G evolution story and where this industry is. And I think everybody is starting their presentation on a slide similar to this. For me, massive excitement around the growth and evolution of this industry. I think what we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years is different than anything we've seen in the communication space really over the last couple of decades. We are seeing an environment where 4G growth is taking off at a phenomenal pace. This combination of now great network performance and great devices coming together and delivering a consumer experience which is very different than anything we saw in the recent past. This enrichment of consumers' lives, enabling them to be connected, to communicate in ways that not too long ago were not possible or feasible. I think the wonderful thing about this 4G world and where we are is that the US is playing a pivotal role in driving this evolution of the 4G space. We have some of the largest and broadest deployments of 4G networks anywhere on the globe occurring here in the US, and we have great companies such as Apple and Google, many others, driving incredible pace of innovation and development in this industry. So a really transforming time. For me, huge excitement. I think we're at the tip of the iceberg here. Much has happened in the last 2 to 3 years, but I think a lot more will be happening over the next 2 to 3 and the next 5 to 10. So I think everybody also has a slide that talks about growth and the phenomenal growth that we anticipate seeing in this industry in terms of data. And this is a Cisco global chart which talks about the growth, this hockey stick shaped profile in terms of growth in the industry over the coming years. And you can see the beginning of this graph kind of where we are now, 11 and 12, and you can see this projection, kind of a 5 times plus growth in mobile data traffic over a very short period of time. 2015, 2016 will be here before we know it. Those calendar years will come by very, very quickly. And I look at this chart as opportunity. Clearly there are challenges for the industry to overcome, but this is an opportunity for the industry to realize. Be that the vendor community, the operators, all of the folks engaged in this industry. This chart talks to clearly this rich opportunity and this emerging 4G world. Okay, so into some of the T-Mobile story for you. And on the left, you can see what's been happening with usage trends here at T-Mobile. And if you go back just a couple of years, you can see where we were with classic smartphones back in the day, maybe a BlackBerry. It was a sidekick for us here at T-Mobile. Products like that were consuming between 15 and 25 megabytes of data per month. And then you can see the growth, 10, 11, and here we are in 12, where the average smartphone usage is approaching a gigabyte of data per month. And then if you look at the higher end phones for us, so the magenta bar on top there, the one that's labeled 1.6 gigabytes, that's kind of our 42, HSPA plus 42 smartphones, of which we have a large number in market, and you can see now phenomenal growth and usage. So this to me is a proof point. Yes, we want to see this growth. It shows that consumers are digesting the services and information that's available in this 4G world in ways that we never did see before. And it backs up some of my comments about this is a very recent phenomenon. The last couple of years, we have seen this start of the real movement of 4G data, especially in the smartphone space. We're starting to see it in the tablet space, of course, now, but smartphones has really been the sweet spot, and we've seen a transforming experience come together with the great devices and with a new era of network performance. That talks to the right-hand side of the screen. I think Mohammed, I was listening in to his presentation, talking about how we used to be so proud of GPRS and kilobits per second, and now we're talking megabits per second, and obviously LTE has a vision to get to a gigabit per second. The speed and transformation that's occurred on these networks really enabling and bringing to life very, very capable consumer electronics in a way that we hadn't seen in the past. So 100 times faster compared to where we were if you went back 3 to 5 years ago. So huge transformation in the device and the network performance and what that's meaning to our customers and the services that they are digesting off of our networks. Okay, so many of you will have heard, certainly Burgess heard many times me talk about the network modernization program that we have underway here at T-Mobile. As we came off the back of the AT&T acquisition, we secured additional spectrum from AT&T as part of that breakup deal. And with that spectrum, you know, we've combined other spectrum assets we've secured. We are now in the process of building out and launching LTE at T-Mobile US. So that's the first step of building a new network on top of a highly performing network that we have today. Our 4G network reaches over 220 million people. We were the first company in the US with a nationwide 4G network. We're very proud of that achievement. And the performance and capability of that 4G network, leveraging HSPA+, continues on today. In independent benchmarking, we see very, very competitive performance of our network to some of the early LTE networks that have been launched. A lot of customers on the T-Mobile network carrying 4G capable smartphones. So a very large percentage of our customer base is living in that 4G space, enjoying the freedom of these great devices and the great networks and the usage profiles that I showed you on the last slide. If I talk about the transformation of our network, there are multiple stages involved, and without spending a lot of time going through this today, I've done it in other presentations. There's a lot of material that's out there today for you to look at if you need to. We're in the process of modernizing about 2/3 of our cell site base, so about 37,000 cell sites of the 52,000 or so that we run and operate today. That modernization incurs two primary phases. One is the introduction of HSPA services in the PCS 1900 band. That work is ongoing. I'll talk about that more a little bit in a second. And then the second phase is the introduction of LTE in 2013. So on the modernization piece at the front end, the work we've been doing this year is very rapidly refarming our 1900 spectrum, clearing up that spectrum or cleaning up that spectrum so we can launch HSPA services. And as outlined on the slide, you can see that work is 95% complete today across the nation. We're already launching HSPA services in key markets. Vegas has launched, Kansas City has launched. We would have actually talked some more about launches this week, and I planned to at this event. But with the events with Hurricane Sandy, that's not been feasible or possible. But very shortly, we will be talking about more major markets launching. And we will launch a series of major markets on HSPA 1900 before the end of this year. LTE is the next big phase for us. A lot of the equipment that we are deploying today is encompassing the LTE gear that we need. That work is ongoing, and LTE will start to turn up in the second half of 2013, building to a nationwide network of 200 million covered pops, or plus 200 million covered pops by the end of the year. The photograph on the right, to give some props to one of our vendors here. This is an Ericsson Air product, and it's one of the most innovative products we've seen in this space for some time. It's an antenna with the active radio components, can't even say it this morning, integrated into the back of the antenna. So that's not just an antenna, it's an antenna with an integrated radio. And that's proved a great product for us to actually speed through zoning, jurisdictional approvals, and so on, and enabling us to very rapidly move through our modernization program. So great network out there today for us, and a lot happening with the modernization of the network, which is very exciting and really sets us up for the next section of my presentation, which is to talk about the combination of T-Mobile and Metro PCS. This very clearly a very exciting combination of two great companies that have done a lot of work over the last decade or so to really drive some great growth and great presence in the industry. What I wanted to start with, and this is a little bit of a premiere for you, is a brief video that we have. This is kind of hot off the presses, so you guys have seen it first time today. And it gives some background on the combination of these two companies. So if we could roll the video there in Chicago, be appreciated.
A stronger network and greater customer choice. These are what the merger of T-Mobile and Metro PCS is all about. This is Neville Ray, Chief Technology Officer of T-Mobile USA. There's been a lot of talk about this merger, and not all of it has been accurate. These 5 facts will help set the record straight. 1. Technology is not an obstacle. This merger will be a migration for customers, not an integration of 2 networks. Metro PCS customers will be able to migrate to T-Mobile's nationwide 4G network. And those with advanced devices will get blazing fast data on T-Mobile's LTE network. 2. 60% of Metro PCS customers upgrade their devices each year, which means the migration between the 2 networks can be completed by the end of 2015. 3. LTE is the future. T-Mobile is investing $4 billion to modernize its network and deliver LTE to more than 200 million Americans by the end of 2013, building a stronger network that's compatible with more devices, including the iPhone. 4. An improved mobile experience will be ready and waiting for Metro PCS customers, including those with advanced LTE devices. These will work on T-Mobile's LTE network from the very beginning. And 5. The 2 companies are better as one, creating a stronger network overall, while increasing customer choice and providing enhanced 4G experiences. T-Mobile and Metro PCS. Better together.
Okay, so that's a quick preview for you of video material that we are pushing out, and you'll see in the public space somewhat subsequent to this event, maybe another week or so before that'll be out there for broader consumption. But you guys got the first peek at it, at least. So you heard me on a video, now you got me back live on a video. Hopefully that's all working for you, and the video was clear. What I wanted to do was just to give you some key background pieces and build on that video. Sorry this slide is extremely texty and busy, but there's a couple of key elements I just wanted to point out here about this tremendous combination of T-Mobile US and Metro PCS. So one of the things I talked about in terms of modernization is our ability to bring on new capacity and capability in 2013. And that's very important when we look at this transaction in terms of our ability to rapidly migrate, a Metro PCS customer base over to a stronger and bigger network from T-Mobile with LTE, and also leveraging the HSPA national network that we have today. So we are going to be looking to migrate a Metro PCS customer base very quickly. They are already rapidly migrating their base to LTE. Results yesterday, you can read the numbers. They have a lot of customers already on their LTE services and on their LTE network. And with this combination with T-Mobile, we can now accelerate that transition and that migration. A lot of detail on the slide, you can read through it. The key intent here is really over a 2 to 2.5 year period to migrate the Metro base over to the stronger and bigger network, to really leverage the spectrum assets, I'll talk about those in a second, that are unique with this combination of T-Mobile and Metro PCS, and move to a synergy opportunity where we can start to turn off and close down the legacy CDMA network. So really accelerating that process that Metro has already done great work on, launching LTE, they have VoLTE services. There's a lot of work that team has really pioneered on. We want to leverage that, help them speed that migration process over to a larger network, and ultimately turn off the CDMA network in a fairly rapid time frame, obviously protecting the customer experience as we do that. So that's one of the key messages I wanted to leave you with today. A lot of data on this slide. If you look to what's my top left, you can see a chart that's labeled cell sites and DAS nodes, and it talks about the combined state of the 2 businesses. Metro's done actually some really great work on building out DAS systems in key urban areas of the US in their markets, and we want to leverage that. We look to retain that, but there's a large number of the cell sites under the 18,000 number that we will look to decommission. Typically macro cell sites that are out there with very duplicative coverage, with the density of the T-Mobile and Metro networks very common in many of these urban markets. But long story short, we end up with a much stronger and combined network with increased density and capacity and capability in these key markets. Kind of illustrated with a subscribers per cell site chart. On the bottom is the piece that I think is probably most exciting to me as the network guy. All of it's exciting, but the fact that our spectrum position is significantly increased and enhanced. So you can see today the T-Mobile bar and the magenta bar there at 63 megahertz across, that's an average megahertz number across the top 25 markets in the US. And you can see with the Metro bar going on top of 13 megahertz, we end up in a 76 megahertz position. And that's a transformational phase for us, moving from a position of really 50 megahertz if you went back 12 months and pre the AT&T breakup announcement. So really building a strong arsenal and capability of spectrum, and I'll demonstrate or illustrate that for you better on this next slide. If you look to the right, it talks about what we can do with LTE spectrum, and this is the piece that's really exciting when you talk about two companies skating where the puck is going, right, in terms of LTE migration and transition. And you can see the the T-Mobile bar, the Metro bar, and then this combined kind of NewCo position, as we call it, as these two companies come together. And you can see a very, very strong position in total spectrum. If you look to the right, the beauty of this spectrum combination is very unique to the T-Mobile and Metro PCS. Contiguous assets. And what we mean by that is in many markets, take in New York, the 30 megahertz that T-Mobile has in AWS and the 20 that's there from Metro PCS, they are directly contiguous. So that's going to afford us this opportunity to move over time to a 2 by 20 megahertz or 20 by 20, depending on how you talk about it, but overall a 40 megahertz position for LTE. We'll launch next year with 2 by 10 or 20 megahertz for LTE, which is a great position to start. As we migrate and work through this migration of the customers with Metro, we can then move to a 2 by 20 or 40 megahertz position, and it's contiguous. I think most of the audience there is going to understand, Berj, what that means. I mean, this is really bringing the LTE experience to life. And you can look at, there's a brief and small footnote there that talks about theoretical peaks in terms of speeds that can be secured on downlink and uplink with a 20 by 20 megahertz combination. Now, Deutsche Telekom actually in Germany is running some 20 by 20 LTE networks. And they are seeing speeds close to those theoretical peaks. 140 megabits per second, averages in the 30 to 50 range. I mean, really exciting and transformational speeds in LTE in contrast to some of the speeds and performance that we see today. Okay, enough on the Metro PCS and T-Mobile deal. Couple of quick thoughts then to round out my presentation on spectrum. I just heard Mohammed talk about, many of the bullet points that are listed out on the bottom. The things that the industry is doing to figure out ways to drive more spectral efficiency and pack more bits and bytes down the radio interface. The top chart really is a chart that demonstrates from Razavi Research the kind of the spectrum crunch and crisis that we face here in the US marketplace. And you can see this demand line, which is really the kind of magenta or pink line on the chart. And you can see how that crosses a no new spectrum line in the very near future in 14 and 15. The blue and green lines represent what can happen, in terms of new spectrum coming to the market through the National Broadband Plan here in the US market. And you can see that unless we really fulfill the ambition and scale and scope of the National Broadband Plan, we are going to be very short of spectrum here in the US. So constantly working with the regulatory authorities here in the US to ensure that we can maintain a strong pipeline of new spectrum. T-Mobile and Metro PCS will be in a very different position with a combination of those two companies in our spectrum position, allowing us to grow strongly in the near to medium term. But in the long term, I don't think there's an operator that's going to stand up in front of you during the 4G World seminars and sessions and say there's enough spectrum in the US marketplace. There clearly isn't. We need more to come. Now that said, the industry is not standing still, and I think many of you in the room are working very hard as operators and as vendors to drive greater efficiency into the spectrum assets that we have. And this is just a very quick roadmap. Obviously, Release 8 networks out there today, big opportunity coming with Release 10. You look at the carrier aggregation and spectrum combination opportunities that are availed in Release 10, higher order MIMO, a whole host of features and capabilities and benefits that come in the next release of the next major release of LTE. And that's something we're very focused on at T-Mobile. The majority of the equipment that we are deploying for LTE is Release 10 capable. And so for us, we want to come to LTE in 13 with a very meaningful and powerful LTE offering, combination of Release 10 capability and higher spectrum bandwidths that we can move into as we work through the combination of Metro and T-Mobile. So I'm going to close my comments there. Well, I got one last slide, and I'll be very quick on this one before I leave you and go to some questions. Last message from me is that the wireless operator is at the hub of all of this innovation and 4G opportunity here in the US. If you look at what's happening in the application space, services space, device space, and the network space, all of these things come to this hub role of the wireless operator. We are involved in all aspects of this industry in all areas. And as operators, I think we have a responsibility to our customers to drive security and privacy, et cetera, et cetera. We take those responsibilities very seriously. At the same time, we are pushing these envelopes of innovation in the space so that we can continue to enhance that consumer experience. And the wireless operator sits at the heart of this industry. And we will be there as T-Mobile US, combined with Metro PCS, driving a stronger and richer future here in the US wireless marketplace. So with that, Burj, I'll close my comments, and I think we've got some time for some questions.
Very good. And in fact, you did a great job. If I ask you to do it again just like this, would you mind not coming to the next 4G world?
I'd much rather be there with you, but I'm glad we've been able to work this through and demonstrate technology, actually.
Exactly.
Right? Where we are today, being able to do these things.
Well, I'm not going to ask for another hurricane, though. I think I'll take a pass on that one, and maybe you will, too.
We'll find another excuse.
Okay, good. We have a large audience, and I suspect if I ask them to come to the microphone, they can stand in line while I ask you a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
The good news is, in terms of the combination of your two companies, that each company was already working on the projects that you described and is not relying on the combined merger for that progress to continue. So you don't have to wait until a regulatory approval in order to make progress on the plan you described, or do you?
No, we don't, Burj. That's absolutely right. I mean, our modernization program is off and running. It was a $4 billion investment that DT provided, into the U.S. business at the beginning of the year. And our roadmap to LTE is a very solid and robust one we're working towards, as I said, for 13. Metro was already rapidly migrating their base. They've launched LTE, I believe, across the majority of their markets, over 1 million customers on LTE services. So, we have both companies kind of, already migrating to this common point. I said the overused phrase, skating where the puck is going, but that's really very appropriate, I think, in this combination. And so the regulatory approval process, filings have occurred. Obviously, they've been publicly reported. That process is underway. We believe this is, a great transaction for the U.S. consumer, and one that should be very supported by the regulatory authorities. And we look forward to, a rapid and quick process there. But the combination of these two companies enhances the two distinct paths that both companies are on today, and we'll end up with, a much stronger network offering as we go forward. So we keep on trucking on our respective programs. Obviously do all the work behind the scenes on the regulatory front, and hopefully we can look forward to an early approval in 13.
And by the way, the last guy who did a video keynote up on this screen was FCC Commissioner Pai, and he said if President Obama's reelected, he will approve this merger. Is that all right?
Is that what he said?
No, I'm only kidding. But, but they're making all kinds of promises, so you never know. You never know.
I can't see you, Burj. I don't know if you're being serious or not.
Yeah, well, you know I am. Okay, we have just time for a couple of questions. Let's start right here.
Hi, this is Macy Ramsey with Wireless Week. I was just hoping for a little bit more detail on your planned LTE coverage next year. I believe in the video you said you plan to cover 200 million people with LTE next year. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Okay,
so
and then you're upgrading, I think you said 2/3 of your cell sites with LTE. So does that mean 2/3 of your network will have LTE next year, or is that not a safe assumption?
No, so the numbers, 37,000 of the 52,000 sites, that's where we are targeting and rolling out LTE. All of that work won't be complete next year, but we'll be at 200 million pops of coverage on LTE by the end of 13. And there'll be some tail activity post that in 14. But the program should wrap up, all going well, in early 14. But the lion's share, major markets, the first 200 million pops, which is really, the critical piece that we need to be, we need up on air. That'll happen within 13. In the second half of 13, that stuff will come on then.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I've been told I have time for only one more question, so why don't we grab it?
Thank you. My name is Heik Sarkisyan with Wireless 2020. First, congratulations and good luck with the merger. It looks like the spectrum alignment will allow you to deploy LTE on AWS and then HSPA plus on PCS, which will open a new device ecosystem for you, including the iPhone. So congratulations for that. My question to you is, when you support CS fallback, circuit switch fallback from LTE, would you do circuit switch fallback only to PCS, or would you also support devices to do circuit switch fallback to AWS HSPA?
So the intent will be to have fallback to HSPA in both AWS and PCS. I mean, we have HSPA in AWS today. So if you think about our LTE offering rolling out next year, then there will be fallback to our AWS HSPA service through circuit switch. Over time, the picture you paint is the correct one. Over time, over a 2 to 3 year period, you see us with the majority of our AWS assets from the combined businesses committed to LTE, and the PCS spectrum will be supporting HSPA. And then there'll be a thin layer of GSM that we have no intent of turning off at this point in time. So that's kind of the end state. As we migrate through, you're going to see the continuance of AWS on HSPA on the AWS spectrum, and we will support a voice path between LTE and that AWS HSPA service.
Thank you.
Listen, I would love to take more questions, but I've been told we really do need to stop, and Neville needs to get on. He's apparently got a hurricane going on. So any other urgent questions, you please should email them to me, and I'll make sure Neville gets them, and we'll try and get back to you with answers. Thank you very much. Neville, just in a closing, is Carly going to survive the merger?
She's out there, and she's riding that bike across the country really fast, Berge. So,
all right, great. Thank you very much.
All right,
thank you very much, Neville.
Okay, good to see you. Bye.